going on? It's me, it's Kenny Roy. Time again, once again, for us to do the AnimGym webcast. Look at those lines. I know it's depressing. Believe me, I'm depressed as you are to see those horizontal lines doing their thing. And I apologize for it. I ordered a new webcam. It's going to be arriving here on Monday, just in time for me to do my next video mail. But yeah, we're just going to have to deal with that crappy video. So I apologize for that. But let's get to the work. Let's get to the work as soon as possible. Because I'm just getting depressed. I'm just getting depressed. The AnimGym is the, as you know, it is the monthly animation exercise on KennyRoy.com. Every single KennyRoy.com member who participates in the AnimGym gets a free critique. It is the only place on the web, on the whole wide world web, that you can do that. You can get a critique from a professional animator on your work, and for the low price of just KennyRoy.com membership, which, if my sources are correct, the going rate is also the highest value for the amount of education training you're getting for the price you pay. So anyway, that's my pitch. I'm not gonna get too salesy right now. Let's just get to work. Okay, we've got my count. My count is 5. Now remember, if you do not receive an email back from me that I have received your AnimGym entry, it means I have not received your AnimGym entry. Okay? Wait a couple days after you turn it in, but if I haven't received it, then I haven't sent you an email. Okay? So that's the only way to tell. So hopefully all 5 of these people are the only 5 that turned in, but we'll get through these one by one. Here we go. Let's start with Nicole. Nicole, again, a stalwart participant in the AnimGym, getting stronger every month, just the way you would expect someone going to a real gym. That's kind of the point. Here we go. First reaction. Remember, first blush. Here we go. All right, very first reaction is that it feels like you started with poses. This feels like a very pose to pose approach. And while I'm not absolutely like requiring people to use tempo, if you are not going to use tempo, then the poses should be so strong that the timing is kind of a the poses are so strong that they're almost kind of like dictating this weird timing that like is not even in the animation. Like you're showing us stuff that like is like not even there. If you know what I mean by that. Like the way that anime works is that they have like almost no transitions. And the idea is that you can really kind of fall back on and rely on those, flying through the air, poses like that, because, it's just like iconic sort of like image in the air. The reason I'm saying it looks like you took a very pose-to-pose approach with this, which is a little bit of a no-no with something that is so physical, is because there are not very many poses in this. in this action. There's the starting pose, which should be a nice pose, on balance, nice silhouette. Maybe you can put a little bit of contrast in there, rhythm, texture, but for the most part, these are physical exercises in the AnimGym, so it's not, that start pose is not super important. But you have your anticipation, and then your actual, either your extreme, your point of contact, or your follow through pose. And so if I stop it and I say, okay, this is your anticipation pose and this is your finish pose, it seems as though there's all of these extra poses. 1, 2, those aren't necessary. Here's one, okay? 3, 4, 5. That's a good one. 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Meaning, it's like your guy is trying to hit this with like hard impact, but the relationship between how long he would have to hold it in air and how quick that hit is the entire, is why this shot was like put on earth, to teach you something. All right, remember, if you can, get to that moment where you are positive what that shot has been put on earth to teach you, as fast as possible. Once there, then just start working that one note. Don't be afraid of what else you're missing out on, because for a shot to allow you to master one thing is such a valuable lesson. If a shot only teaches you one thing, that's still an amazing, valuable lesson. All right, so don't worry if you're working on something and you're like, oh, well, I want to work on the feet and I want to do a lot with, I want to see what I can do by tracking, the arcs of the eyes in a high action moment right now. See how much work I can actually do on the eyes, even if a character is moving quickly. Like all these ideas and all these things. Like that's trying to do too much. All right, once you discover that this shot, and that is what this shot is put on earth to teach you, Nicole. Once you discover that this shot is about the relationship, the timing relationship between the speed that he gets the hammer into that anticipation, the hold on that swing, and then the hit. All your time should be put into experimenting. 1 frame earlier, 2 frames earlier on the anticipation, 1 frame later on the anticipation, 2 frames longer on the hold, 3 frames longer on the anticipation, 1 frame less on the hold. 2 frames later on the anticipation, 2 frames less on the hold, 1 frame quicker on the hit. 1 frame less on the anticipation, 1 frame less on the hold. 5 frames longer on the hit. The permutations are endless, but the practice of iterating 100 times in 10 minutes, picking the best one and going with it, that is what we all need to be exercising. Getting so good at doing 100 versions and picking the best one, that while we're on the job and while it is important to figure out what the crux of a shot is, what a shot has in store for you, and then just pounding that note as hard as you can, your workflow will get so fast. But here I see just a whole lot of poses that are getting in the way of you timing anything, really. I purposefully released that lecture the very end of the month because it was another AnimGym walkthrough, and I wanted to talk about opposing forces in with tempo. And as you can see, if you watch the lecture back, as you can see, I spent very little time doing experiments, but there was a moment that I was like, you know what? I was about to move on. I was really happy with what I saw, but I was about to move on. And I was like, you know what? I can't move on right now. Even though I want to move on, I can't move on because I'm constantly talking about experimenting. And then I did like 4 or 5 experiments, just 4 or 5 tiny little permutations, like 2 frames, 1 frame, check this, 2 frames, 1 frame, another 1 frame. That was like 5 tests, and now I was done and I moved on. And it actually was better. I want you to think about and focus on, Nicole, finding the one thing that a shot is meant to teach you, meant to make it's an opportunity to master something, and you can get 100 versions done in an hour. Okay, and anyone here in the AnimGym is a good enough animator that if they see 100 different versions of an animation, you can pick out the best one. Okay, just imagine it's like a animation contest. All right, you're going to get better animation if you hold an animation contest and there's 100 entries rather than 10 entries, right? Or 1 entry. Just statistically speaking, you're hoping if you run this little animation contest, you know, maybe out of your community center or within your company or whatever, just for fun, little animation contest, you're hoping to get a lot of entries, right? Basically because statistically you're going to get better work the more entries there are. Just imagine every single shot is an animation contest where you are expected to provide all of the entries. The statistics are the same. The more entries there are, the better the animation is going to be. The higher quality all of the entries are going to be statistically if there's more entries. All right. So Nicole, focus on finding what a shot is allowing you to master. Okay? Because this timing doesn't really hold anything special for you. All right? And the poses are kind of just standard. All right? But it is very good that you're still doing the AnimGym. It's very good that you're still working. Okay, so keep it up. Thank you, Nicole. All right, Lewis, who I think is Jubilee on email. I can't be certain because I had to download this from YouTube, from a YouTube link. But at any rate, here we go. Okay, cool. So this kind of almost has the same approach as mine, where the character basically it's a sort of a cartoony, sort of pushed, you know, slightly unrealistic jump. Let me just trim this last frame off there. Sort of like a hang in the air kind of jump, which is cool. I would say the same thing. I would just repeat myself one more time for you, Lewis, which is that the most important thing about doing these AnimGym exercises is to find as fast as possible, what is this shot supposed to teach me? What can I get really good at by doing this shot? The shot sort of starts out with a little bit of a weak like weightlifting exercise. This was not about weightlifting. This was not about, you know, the heavy box or the bowling ball exercise. This was about swinging a hammer. Okay, so really I'm talking about, if I go to frame count here, you're only really starting the meat, the meat of this exercise, you know, somewhere around between you know, frame 24 and 28 is when you're starting to actually work that hammer. So if I constrain this, this doesn't really hold much for me because it's not part of the hammer swing. So if I'm a little bit liberal and I give you from frame 24, we only have about 24 frames of animation here. Okay. And I'm not doing that to be harsh on you. I'm really not. But try to focus on what is important here. Okay. The hammer, I feel like it is a little bit again of a missed opportunity to take some really cool opposing force with the body, because he seems to be quite able to jump, and you're getting kind of a little bit caught up and confused up here in silhouette. There's a lot, if you squint your eyes, there's almost a majority of frames where we're almost seeing no detail in his silhouette because of lost to foreshortening, especially in the upper body. So what I'm just wondering is if there was a way that you could have him leap up into the air, show how heavy this hammer is by letting it sort of lag behind a little bit more and a little bit longer. And as that happens, take on some posing where, you know, his body is twisting a little bit more first of all. So his shoulder, so his shoulders are twisted, and then this arm, instead of being up in front of him, like I said, like everything is a lot more twisted. All right, as he's jumping, you have a little bit of a stronger line, but as he's jumping, we get a little bit better of a read because both hands are behind him, and that hammer is lagging behind a lot more and a lot longer. So it's lagging further behind him and further in time behind him. And as he's jumping, we're keeping that really, you know, readable silhouette of both of his arms as they are as we see them from behind. They're both kind of like coming up behind him, outside of his periphery a little bit more. And then once we sort of like slow into this apex right here, like we get up here and sort of nicely do it, then there's a really nasty vroom crank of that hammer, because as it stands, it seems as though it's a little bit effortless for him to jump while still holding it. And again, kind of like what I'm seeing silhouette wise, is all kind of like lined up and stacked up and confused. There's almost no anticipation, which I'd be fine with as long as the body and the hammer were moving sort of at different paces. It seems also as though on the end of this, this is not a pose change, but his entire body rotating. It seems like you're rotating almost like the master controller. I would be worried about not doing this in pose change, or at least what I can say about the pose change that I'm seeing is that it looks far too full body, far too much like he's like parented to a locator and just spinning the whole thing. I would turn this more into pose change than kind of what feels like just, you know, a master controller moving. And last thing I would say is that the hammer, if it is truly heavy, his arms should be outstretched, you know, outstretched this entire time he's swinging it, if you can. But when it impacts with bent elbows, we don't really get the right idea there. Also, he seems to land, you know, it seems like as though you feel like he has to land by the last frame. He doesn't at all. He doesn't at all. Just naturally let what's supposed to happen happen. If you get to your last frame, then just end the animation. Okay? Thank you, man. Thank you. Ben Imber, or Imber. Ben, let's see what Ben came up with. Pardon me. Oops. Ooh, nice. Nice job. Nicely done. Okay, so Ben, what my at first blush, I would say that this is, you know, very strong, and you got a lot of great ideas going on in here. I would say that for my money, the amount that his body seems to have to lead the hammer is kind of betraying the true weight of the hammer. We know how much hammer weighs, and so the fact that you're using like 2 frames of anticipation of lead on the chest to sort of crank the hammer down on there, it kind of feels like he's exaggerating the weight of the hammer a little bit. I love it when, you know, weight is respected. I love it when things are broken up purposefully. I love all those kinds of things. I just think maybe this might be you see what I'm talking about? So I think it's about 2 frames. All right, so it changes direction. Let's discount that one. 1, 2, and then the hammer kind of just starts coming. Yeah, I would say that maybe that might be a little bit too much. I would just take it down to sort of bring the weight of the hammer a little bit back into the realm of possibility, what we were expecting to see. I love it when there is a you know, deformation like this on like the model, and good idea to make it so that the nail bends to also show that he missed the nail in the top of his finger. Also, for my money, I would say that, you know, I like it when either reactions are like instantaneous, like bam bam blah, right, or bam bam bam. Ah! But yours is, I would push it 2 frames one or the other way. It's for me, it feels a little bit too slow for realistic, a little bit too fast for cartoony. I would just give it 2 frames either way would kind of like push it into clearly into one or the other areas. Love sliding feet. Oh my goodness, love sliding feet. Just like feet that are moving while they are on the ground. Stellar stuff, stellar stuff. The overall pose, overall composition staging, again, super strong. You could do a little bit to calm down this area of the composition while the whole thing is going. I'm loving this whole movement and the hammer coming out of this area of the screen and hitting something here. But if you don't calm this down a little bit, we won't. You miss an opportunity for there to be some hand movement only on the time that the hammer hits the hand. Or some hand move, yes, exactly. So the hand is kind of like close to screen as well and moving the whole time. All right, you see that? Like, I don't know which time the hand actually gets hit by the hammer, but if it's perfectly still and I'm hitting, and then the one time it actually gets hit, it moves, then clear as day. In fact, we can be watching his face. You give your audience an opportunity to enjoy more of your shot. In fact, you know, we're supposed to, as animators, sort of like, you know, guide the eye and push the eye where we want it to go. The audience, naturally, you can just assume that 75% of your audience is always going to be watching the face, no matter where the face is, no matter what the face is doing. You're giving us a fun face to enjoy. All right, but if we are not looking at the hand and we're looking at the face, then we're going to miss that hammer hit, aren't we? So give us the freedom as an audience to look at what we want to by calming that hand down and having it so that on that one where it gets hit, okay, that if we're watching the face, that peripherally we will still see that impact happen. All right. his face reacts a little bit quickly as well. His face is almost instantaneous when he hits his hand. And then I'm not quite believing that he's on balance as he comes back here. He lifts up this screen left hand, and if he's so leaned over, he's almost in like a cat pose, leaned over this hammer. If he's so leaned over, once he drops that hammer and lifts his hand up, he would fall flat. He would fall completely straight forward. You don't have him actually rocking back over his center of gravity on his hips far enough for him to be able to stand up. Look how still leaned forward he is. Right? He would fall flat forward. So just consider that, popping him back there a little bit quicker and a little bit, and rock him back a little bit more over his hips, over his cog. Okay? Good stuff though. Very glad to have you in the AnimGym. Hope you do a few more entries during your time at KennyRoy.com. Okay? Thank you, Ben. Good work. Good work indeed. Bhanu. Bhanu, not to be confused with Bonnaroo, which is a music festival, but Bhanu, which is an animator. Here we go. Okay, same thing. I just start out. You probably, if you've been watching this thing the whole way through, you probably, when I said, "Hey, this is not a weight lift exercise." I'm sorry. I have a little bit of a sniffle. You probably knew that I was going to also repeat to you. This wasn't a heavy lift exercise. This was a hammer swing exercise, and what I wanted to get you guys to try to do was to experiment with timing to see if you chose a sledgehammer, what in my timing, and I'm going to try 100 different permutations, but what in my timing is affecting and showing that this is actually a sledgehammer and not just like a light 1 pound hammer or whatever. That was the idea. And so if you're going to spend, you spend about 3/4 of your your animation actually lifting the thing, and then finally when he swings it, nothing about the swing is really actually showing me how heavy this thing is. I mean, I'm assuming it's heavy, but that's primarily let me trim selection or play selection only. As it's back here, it does almost kind of feel like it's a heavy hammer, but he accelerates it way too fast with just his hands. And here's why, that point where it starts accelerating, it starts accelerating as it's still behind his head. So it's still in lift mode. It's still being lifted as it starts accelerating. If you got it over and then it like actually started speeding up, then I would say that it's heavy. But you see how it's behind his head? I'll give you a little bit more range. Do you see how it's like, oh, this is so heavy, wham, like that? It's like, boom, he gets it, he like really speeds it up with almost no effort. That is not the same hammer. I'm going to hit Control T, which will make it so that it plays not just this, but the entire range. So it's going to play the hit one more time, and then it's going to play the lift. These are two different hammers. Check this out. You gotta be as strict on yourself as I'm being with you right now. These are two different hammers. Look how he's able to accelerate that and bam, hit that nail. Watch. And now, you see that? Gosh, that thing looks like it's 100 pounds. Bam! Like that. You see my issue here? It's a very different weight hammer in those two different sections. And so, if I were you, honestly, to get the practice that you need, I would start the animation. I would drag all your animation, or just go in Maya and then just make frame 40 your new frame 1. Okay, so like go in the timeline, make it, instead of like 1 to 72, make it 40 to 120 or whatever it is. Okay, 40 to 120. That's 80 frames. Whatever, 40 to 110. And then 40 to 110 now is your chance to do a very heavy hammer hit. Okay, and experiment with the timing of how he hits to see what actually feels like the weight of the hammer that you were going for. Okay, I will give you a little bit of critique on this. Do you see how as he's lifting, the end of the hammer starts going up first, and it goes up faster than the handle? The end of this hammer, it doesn't matter how heavy it is, he's not going to probably use his strength to make sure that the light end of the hammer, the handle, doesn't come up a little bit before the end of the hammer, okay? Because that's such a heavy weight. He would start lifting, pulling on it, and then start getting the end of it over there. But for the most part, it's going to be handle first, and then start evening out. But really, I mean, if it's as heavy as it is, nobody can hold a sledgehammer out like this. Nobody, even like a 5-pound sledgehammer on the end of a stick like this. Okay, a pound of torque is defined as how much torque a 1 pound weight is a foot away from the point where it's attached. Okay, so if this is a 3 foot long, if this is a meter long, all right, and it's a 5-pound sledgehammer or a 10-pound sledgehammer, that is, I think it's exponential. Okay, so it's not just twice as heavy or 3 times heavy, it's 8 times as heavy. So it's 8 times 5 pounds. That's 40 foot-pounds of torque out there. Okay, 40 foot-pounds. So I think I did the math right. If I didn't, someone who knows about, you know, probably cars can correct me on that. But holding that out there, I mean, that's just too long. So I would probably just take the hands, spread them out a little bit, have him get it up here, and then heft it up, bring his hands together, and then it can start accelerating as it's going down, and he's helping it go down. I would say would probably be a more accurate sort of like weight representation here. All right, so think about doing that. Take a look at that, and I'll see your. If you want to send me that after you're done with it, I'd be glad to look at it one more time. Okay, but thank you, Bhanu. Apologize once again for my sniffles. Okay, last one. This is Kiwana Julius, again a super stalwart participant in the AnimGym, getting better every month. This is where it's at. Oh, guys, this is where it's at. Okay, everyone, just take a close look at this, and I didn't even know I did them in random order. I had no idea, and sometimes you guys name your stuff differently, so it's not even alphabetical or reverse alphabetical. Sometimes it's just file name. Okay, but look at that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I dare you to try to come up with a better line of action for this moment. Remember, I talk a lot about moments in tempo, but this is a strong one. Gosh, and just how this is lined up, I would say if you like, just maybe get this hand over here just a little bit more, so that this hand, this backhand, we might be able to get just a little bit more of a read on that back elbow. But just get this, you know, a little bit of opposition in here. Oh my Lord, though, the guys, and just how long he's up there in this dope pose, and then brings it down. Guys, this is where it's at. Really super strong, Kiwana. I would say. So yeah, so he gets up there. I would say that everything, I love the little adjustment of the fingers and whatever. It might be a little too much. Like more still might be better. Might be a little bit better. So I would just calm the motion down just a little bit. It's just a little floaty swimmy up here. But like the timing of this, I can tell you tempoed the crap out of this shot, man. I love it. You got him up there. You got him where he needs to be. A little bit of slidey footy, a little bit of shaky, you know, slidey toey stuff. Fantastic. I love moving feet on the ground. I love them. The sledgehammer leads the action very nicely. Yeah, honestly, my only critique, man, God, I love that little look, that eye line so strong. Seriously, this is work that that if we were working on a commercial and like Kiwana was you know doing the little hammering cycle. Let's say there's like all these like robots on a railroad and they're all like hammering it in or something, some cool shot like that. I would come by Kitwana's desk right now. I said, this is looking fantastic. I want to show this to the client almost as is. Can you fix one thing for me? As I'm watching this, I'm digging that iconic, you know, it's up and he's looking at it and like his eyes right there, but I feel like just behind here, he gets it up and it just swims just a little bit. Calm it down in the hands. It's stronger if it's more still, and then let me send this to client. We're going to blow their socks off. This is stellar work. All right. I don't know how long you worked on this, but I know that it's been, that as you've been working in the AnimGym, that it's been shorter and shorter and shorter, because I know for a fact Kitwana is taking a lot of the tempo notes to heart. Really cool, man. It's a little bit stiff then after the hit as well, though. I'm just looking at these hands, and they should definitely, after it hits, they should still kind of have some movement in them. Even though the hammer is still, then the tip of the hammer becomes the point of rotation for those arms. So he hits, and then those arms can sort of be, you know, moving like that. That might be a little bit of a complex constraint setup to create just for, you know, 4 frames at the end of the shot. So that would be something that if I told you that, if you were on the job here, you could tell me then, okay, I'll definitely do that, but I want to create that constraint system after everything is like completely done, and so that I'm not like moving that, you know, that constraint switch and having to change the timing of it and whatever. And I would say to you then, I would say, yeah, that's okay, totally fine. So let's get everything else up to snuff, and then you know, I'll let you know when you can create that constraint. The amount of overlap on the shoulders, neck, and head, everything is exactly where I'd say it should be. This is stellar work. This is stellar. I love it. This is a physical animation test done right. And if you do one of these, if you do one of these a week, and this is for everybody, not just Kiwana, for everybody. If you do one of these level physical tests a week in 1 year, that's just 52 of them, okay? In 1 year, I would bet any amount of money that you could get a job at any of the any of these studios that are doing, you know, this kind of work, like probably like game studio for sure, commercial, television, VFX houses, even TV episodic. That's all it takes. Mastery, not that out of reach. Just think about this. Think to yourself right now, Kiwana, thank you so much. Looking fantastic. Really happy you're a part of the AnimGym. Keep it up, buddy. Think about this right now. And I'll leave you guys with this because that's the last one. Think about if you want to master animation and get to a place where you are just hireable. It's not even a question. It's not even like a big discussion, you know, for the people that are making that decision. They're just like, yeah. They look at it and they're like, yes. You know, if you want to get there, Think about if you want to put in the time it would take for you to be able to create something on the level that Kiwana did, and not ever waver, meaning not ever have a moment where you're like, well, I'm going to do one that's twice as long now, and then maybe you don't get to it, and you're like, well, I worked as long as I would have if I worked for these 2 weeks on one, so I kind of did it. No. Like, say I'm going to do a 48 to 72 frame physical test. It's going to have at least that standard of quality, and I'm going to do one every single week. If you can commit to just that, in 1 year, you will be hireable, okay? This is better work from out of Kiwana than I've seen so far. So he's improving at a measurable rate. A few more of these, let me just show you one more time, okay? This is the same, assignment that everybody was given, okay? A few more of these, and I'm going to start talking to Kiwana about doing some freelance animation. And I'm not kidding about that. Kiwana, don't get your hopes up. It depends on what work comes in. But seriously, you keep this up, and we're going to be working together soon. Okay? Let that inspire and motivate everybody. Okay? Kiwana is leading the way. Stalwart participant in the AnimGym. Knows what it takes to get better. All right? Think about if you want to put that time in. All right? Decide and let me know. All right. I've had a lot of fun. I'm Kenny Roy. I'll see you next time in the AnimGym. Good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.